This is the Nexthing Co. PocketChip. I have attached a proto board to the top with some pins and a level converter so that it can control some LED lights. You'll see those later in the video. The thing is not currently booting. I had it working before and something went wrong. It boots up and complains about a block error. So what I need to do is connect the fel pin to the ground pin, which will put it into a reflash mode while it's plugged into the USB port on a computer, and then I'll be able to use their flashing program to flash it. Their flashing program is kind of interesting. It actually runs in Google Chrome. It doesn't work in Firefox. I did try. The flashing program, just you select which OS you want to boot. Normally this thing comes with PocketChip. I use the latest headless chip image because it works fine. You can still see the screen on here. It doesn't boot into a UI, it's got less stuff installed. It's more like a minimal Debian install than the other ones. This is probably the most user-friendly flashing interface I've seen. It's also nice that it's cross-platform. Usually the instructions for reflashing this type of device are very platform-dependent. Getting the USB set up correctly is difficult. Getting a USB TTL interface or TTY interface set up is complicated. This thing, no matter what OS you have, it just works. This thing runs a pretty typical Debian interface. The only real differences are it's running a modified kernel. The pins are still configured through device tree, which I don't honestly fully understand how that works, but I managed to take one of their examples and modify it to get it working with the SPI output pins, which the lights I'm attaching are SPI controlled. They're not the Adafruit NeoPixels, they're a different one. They're SPI controlled, which makes them easier to control from Linux. The Adafruit ones are easy to control from Arduino, but not very straightforward to control from an actual operating system where your input and output can be interrupted by the process scheduler. This thing has default credentials, which is chip/chip. Once I have it reflash and log in, the next step is to get it online. It's got a built-in Wi-Fi chip. Just ran NMTY, selected my Wi-Fi, put in my credentials, and then I'm online. Because the keyboard, it's nice that it has a keyboard, but it's kind of difficult to use for an extended period of time. So after this, I just SSH in to do the rest of my configuration to get the lights working, to change the security stuff. I always modify the default user and default root password. This software I'm using to control the lights is called OLAD, or Open Lighting Architecture Daemon. I probably could have written a program to just control the lights via the SPI interface. In Linux, it just shows up as a device, and then you treat it like it's a file and write data to it, and the lights do things. But because I use the existing software that speaks DMX over Ethernet, either in the form of SACN or ArtNet, I use the ArtNet interface, not for any particular reason. I was able to use some existing software to send interesting light patterns to the light that exists in the stage lighting world. It made the whole process a lot easier, to be able to piggyback on existing stuff. The way these lights work, you can actually daisy chain them together. I've got a couple of strands I want to try daisy chaining at some point. So far I've only daisy chained 2 of them together. You can see the connectors on here that I've added to make them, so you can plug them into each other. The power supply I have running this thing is 5 volts, 10 amps. The idea, and it's not wired up correctly for this now, is to adapt this to be able to run the chip and the lights off of one 5-volt power supply. That shouldn't in theory be too difficult, but for now the PocketChip is wired separately either via USB or the attached battery. I also want to remove the PocketChip interface completely and just have the chip with a circuit board on it and maybe a nice case or something, and then it'll be a much smaller thing to stick under a Christmas tree. Should make it a lot more manageable, a lot less clunky looking. And the screen doesn't really do it any favors once it's built.